Now, you cut the chicken into large pieces. This thing of small things doesn't apply here, because this is an old Georgian recipe, and the Georgians liked to make their terrines and such like very pretty. And one way of doing that was to create this marbled effect. And one of the ways of doing that with this way is to have large chunks of chicken, because chicken, unlike pork, doesn't require that much cooking to get the job done.
I say, actually, one of the byproducts of actually having chunky cut like that is that, in fact, it will be much moister, won't it, when it comes to the eating part?
Just so. That's the main purpose of that. You can see there, and it's very quick and easy to do.
Yeah, okay.
It's such a very pretty thing as well. And the lardo, you can see here, is just a pure white piece of pork back fat, which you take the rind off, and you cut it very small like that. And the reason you use this, as you can smell, it's a much finer product than what you can buy here. And we get rid of this board, and then finish this mixture. The artichoke we have chopped, and then take your herbs, which we'll chop very roughly, the parsley and the tarragon, the thyme is in the shallot. These you don't need to be too precise about. You can keep this fairly good, which I reckon I can do it, unless it's hot and socks. Completely marbling, and then to add a nice little seasoning, your chopped shallot and thyme and a little bit of garlic being cooked in oil. And this, a generous glug of Madeira, pirate scale, I reckon. And then white wine, loads it. And you want plenty. There's no point in being shy about these things. That never did anyone any favours, culinary-wise. And what we're always shy of, salt, plenty of. There's nothing worse than having spent hours and hours and hours making a terrine to find there's no flavour in there whatsoever. Singularly dull. And plenty of freshly milled pepper. And you want to make sure you do freshly mill. The temptation of reaching for that tub of white powder, which is more suited to the inside of a washing machine, or a Hoover for that matter, actually. And then mix very well. Now, there's a lot of juice here, it will seem, but that's all going to get cooked into the terrine, and when you weight it down after cooking, which is very important, any juice that seeps out, you just put straight back in, and it will create the most amazing jelly around the terrine, which is always a treat and a prize. Now, that can sit quite happily for half an hour or so, while you finish lining your terrine. Now, this lardo, the piece I showed you before, was pure white. This stuff is more like pancetta. It's got quite a lot of meat on it, but it is absolutely delicious, and really not that important a thing to have to deal with. And go quite quickly, because there's so much fat in this, it softens very, very quickly. And then take your terrine mix and pack it in, cram it in, touch it like crazy, and then fold over the lardo thusly, and then flip over the ends, thusly and thusly. And then pack again, very firmly, and then take a piece of baking parchment to protect it, unless your terrine has a lid. But this, we're using a loaf tin for this one. We thought it was rather kinder, like something else. And then another piece, and then the very neat thing of just fold and twist all the way round to make a very neat, secure seal right round into a bain-marie, into the oven for about an hour, I'd say, for that. And the finest way to check is the proverbial stabbing with a knife and taking to the tip of the tongue, and when it's hot, it's done.